They found this human figure in a hidden underground city, real discovery that terrified archaeologists. The first sound they heard was a scream from the tunnel below. Then silence. The floodlight had gone out again. When the lights finally flickered back on, every worker froze. In front of them stood the figure, a tall, human-like shape covered in pale stone. It looked like someone had been buried standing up, then carved out of the rock. But what made everyone step back was its chest. It was slowly rising and falling, as if it were breathing. Dust fell from its body, and for a split second, its head turned toward the light. That's when the camera went dead. No one spoke. The air felt heavy. One man, Eric, whispered, "It moved, right?" But before anyone could answer, the figure made a soft cracking sound, like stone breaking under pressure. Then the tunnel lights flickered again, and this time the figure was gone. 3 days earlier, everything had seemed normal. The crew had been sent to Cappadocia, Turkey, to repair an old foundation for a small hotel project. The ground was soft volcanic rock, easy to drill through, and the work was supposed to take only a week. Eric, a site supervisor from Colorado, was there with 5 others, Mike, Luis, Henry, and the 2 local guides, Sem and Yusuf. They had no idea that the land they were digging under sat on top of Derinkuyu, one of the oldest underground cities ever discovered. The project began smoothly until the drill hit something hollow. The sound was different, an empty echo that carried through the soil. Curious, Eric ordered them to stop the machine. They dug by hand and soon uncovered an arch-shaped stone doorway sealed with dry clay. Sem, the local guide, grew nervous. He said it looked like the kind of entry used to block off dangerous air pockets or, worse, places where people were trapped long ago. But Eric wanted to see what was inside. When they broke through the seal, a burst of cold air came rushing out. It smelled old, like dust, iron, and something faintly sour. Behind it was a staircase spiraling down into darkness. They thought it might connect to part of the known city of Derinkuyu, so they brought floodlights and cameras to document it. The first few levels looked ordinary, narrow tunnels, stone walls, and old storage rooms with broken pots. But about 60 feet below, they entered a space that wasn't on any map. The chamber was round, almost perfect, with walls smooth as glass. Strange symbols were carved in spirals across the ceiling, and in the center stood a figure. It was about 6 feet tall, facing the wall, with its arms slightly apart from its sides. Its skin looked like stone, but its shape was too detailed. Muscles, ribs, even fingers. The team thought it was an old statue left by some forgotten culture. Eric joked that they had found Turkey's version of the terracotta man. But Luis noticed something that made him step back. The surface wasn't cold. When he touched its shoulder, it felt warm, like touching stone that had been in the sun all day. Everyone laughed nervously, thinking it was his imagination. They took pictures and marked the site for review, then returned to the surface to report it. The next day, when officials arrived, the figure had changed. Its head was tilted slightly upward, and one of its arms was bent at the elbow. Eric swore the arm had been straight before. The archaeologists argued it might be a trick of the light or natural shifting from underground pressure. Still, they took scans of it using thermal equipment, and that's when everything changed. The scanner showed organic heat signatures inside the stone, a spine, a rib cage, even a faint pulse of warmth in the chest area. "That's impossible," said Dr. Morgan, the lead archaeologist. "This thing shouldn't be alive." They decided to take a sample from its outer layer. As the drill touched its neck, the figure released a soft, vibrating hum, deep and low, like metal under strain. Everyone stepped back. The hum continued for 6 seconds, then stopped. The lights flickered again. A crack appeared along the figure's chest, thin but visible. Dr. Morgan shouted for everyone to leave the chamber. The team rushed to the stairway, but Henry tripped over a stone slab and fell. Eric turned back to help him, and that's when he saw it. The figure's eyes were no longer shut. They were small, black voids, staring directly at him. He froze. Henry screamed, scrambling to his feet, and they both ran up the tunnel. Behind them, the sound of stone grinding echoed to the passage like something dragging itself along the wall. By the time they reached the surface, the sound stopped, When they returned with the others minutes later, the chamber was empty. The figure had vanished. Authorities arrived that evening. The site was blocked off with metal barriers, and all workers were ordered not to speak of what happened. But Eric couldn't shake the feeling that something had followed him up. That night, while staying in a nearby guest house, he woke to the sound of scraping, slow, steady, coming from the wall behind his bed. He placed his ear against the plaster. The sound stopped, and then, faintly, he heard it, a low hum, the same sound from the underground chamber. Panicked, Eric woke Luis and Sem, but when they searched the room, there was nothing there. Still, the sound continued faintly through the night, like something breathing behind the walls. Sem refused to stay another day and left before sunrise. The following morning, workers at the site discovered new cracks leading from the chamber to a smaller, uncharted tunnel. The ground was soft there, as if something heavy had passed through overnight. Eric tried to contact the authorities, but the radio signal wouldn't connect underground. Then, while checking the lower passage with a flashlight, Mike found a small handprint pressed into the dirt wall. It was shaped perfectly like a human hand, but the fingers were too long, almost double the normal size. He called for Eric. They stared at the mark together. Luis muttered, "It's still here." Before Eric could reply, the ground beneath them began to vibrate. Dust fell from the ceiling. The floodlights flickered. And then came the sound, deep, steady, and close. The same hum, but louder now, echoing to the walls like a living heartbeat. Something was moving in the dark tunnel ahead. The hum grew louder, shaking the air like the slow beat of a drum under the earth. Eric's flashlight flickered, and for a second he saw something, tall, gray, and smooth, slide behind the far wall. He froze, breathing fast. Luis whispered, "Turn off the lights." They did. The chamber sank into darkness, and all that was left was the sound. It wasn't just humming anymore. There was breathing. A faint glow appeared at the end of the tunnel, soft and pale, like light coming from under the stone. Then the figure stepped out. Its body was still coated in that strange rock-like shell, but parts of it cracked open, showing something darker inside, something wet and human. Its head tilted slightly, as if it were listening to them. Then, slowly, it raised one arm and touched the wall beside it. Wherever it touched, the stone melted away into dust. Eric grabbed Luis's arm. "Run." They didn't argue. The two men ran up the spiral steps as dust rained down around them. The tunnel walls shook, and the floor began to crumble. When they reached the third level, they found Henry waiting, terrified. He had gone to check the generator when he heard their screams. "What is it?" he shouted. Eric didn't answer. He just kept pulling him toward the exit. As they neared the upper passage, they heard the sound again, but this time it came from above them. The lights flickered once more, and the tunnel roof cracked open, sending rocks tumbling down. Eric fell hard against the wall. When he looked up, a hand, long, pale, and made of stone, reached through the gap and brushed the ground near his foot. He scrambled back. The hand was gone, but the tunnel was blocked now, filled with broken stone. They were trapped. For almost an hour, the three men sat in the darkness, listening. The air smelled sharp, like burning metal. Sometimes they thought they heard whispering, soft and distant, echoing through the narrow passages. Finally, the humming stopped. Everything was quiet. Henry managed to radio the surface team, who promised to send help. But before the rescuers could reach them, the sound began again, fainter, but spreading through the tunnels like a vibration under their feet. Luis pressed his ear to the wall. "It's moving," he said. "It's not one sound, it's many." They waited in silence. Then, from the shadows ahead, came a voice. It wasn't clear or human. It sounded like a recording played backward, deep and stretched. It spoke one word that none of them understood. The lights from their helmets began to flicker wildly. Henry's flashlight exploded with a loud pop, plunging them back into darkness. When emergency lights finally came on, Luis was gone. Only his helmet lay on the ground, its light still glowing. The stone beside it looked wet, like something had been pressed into it. Eric knelt down and touched it. The rock was warm again, just like before. He whispered Luis's name, but there was no reply. Henry grabbed his arm. "We have to move." They followed the tunnel in silence until they reached the second passage. There, the air was cold again, so cold they could see their breath. A low mist clung to the floor. As they stepped through, the walls around them began to show strange carvings. Faces, hundreds of them, frozen in screaming shapes. Some were so realistic they looked like people buried alive in the stone. Henry stopped walking. "Eric, look at this one." On the wall beside them was a carving that looked exactly like Louise, mouth open, eyes wide. Even the helmet strap was carved perfectly into the rock. Eric stumbled back. He wanted to believe it was just his imagination, but when he shined his light ahead, he saw more. Mike, Sem Yusuf, even Dr. Morgan. Every face from the team was there, carved into the wall as if the city had swallowed them whole. Henry began to shake. "We're not supposed to be here." They ran. The sound of their boots echoed endlessly as the tunnels twisted and turned. But no matter which way they went, the path always seemed to lead them back to the same round chamber, the same spot where the figure had first stood. Only now the figure was back. It was standing in the center again, taller than before, its cracks glowing with pale light. The ground around it pulsed faintly, like a heartbeat through the stone. Eric stepped back, whispering, "It's alive." The figure's head turned, and a voice, clear this time, spoke in English. "Do not open the ground again." Then everything went black. When Eric woke, he was outside, lying near the entrance of the dig site. The sun was rising. The local police were everywhere, sealing off the area. He looked around for Henry, but he was gone. The officials questioned him, but he couldn't answer. He couldn't remember how he got out. All he could remember was that voice and the image of the figure's glowing cracks closing as the city shook. Later that day, the government declared the site unsafe and sealed the tunnels permanently. No photos, no samples, no records were released. But Eric couldn't sleep that night. From his hotel window, he could see the hills of Cappadocia glowing faintly under the moonlight. And just before dawn, he heard it again, the hum. This time, it was coming from under the hotel floor. He placed his ear against the cold tile, trembling. The sound was steady, calm, and close, like a slow heartbeat waiting deep underground. Then he heard a faint cracking sound from the wall. A piece of plaster fell to the floor, revealing something smooth and pale beneath it, like the edge of a stone face. Eric backed away, heart pounding. He stared at the wall as another piece of plaster dropped away, showing part of an eye carved into the surface, just like the ones in the tunnels. And before he could move, the light in his room flickered once, twice, and then went out completely. In the darkness, the humming stopped, and a whisper filled the room. "You open ground."